Hello, this is Alex from FCOG Gaming, welcoming you to another episode of my Realistic Space Program series. I have a couple missions that I've put together for you today. The first one, which you are seeing the construction of right now, is an unmanned science probe designed to collect science from the high space and low space of a body. This mission sends it to the moon, which I realize is kind of not necessary. Since it's easy enough to send people there, but this is more of a proof of concept for me to send unmanned probes out to planets before I have the means to provide life support for our astronauts. Now, since I am using Ferram Aerospace, of course I have to have the fairing there, which I'm getting into position. And also, I have to have some sort of heat shield, since I'm using deadly re-entry. Now, I did put the heat shield on this probe, but unfortunately, I didn't really know how to use it correctly, and that will come into play here in a little bit. So I have 3 boosters there, ascent stage, a maneuver stage, and then, an ascent stage, a transfer stage, and then a maneuver stage. And this is how it gets launched. Basically, I had to turn the boosters down to about 50%, which you can do in the VAB by right-clicking on. And that way it kept me from going over terminal velocity and all that good stuff. Now, as you can see, I did have a little bit of issue launching this thing right away. I'm still not used to the Ferram Aerospace. Flight deployment's in, there it goes, and the engine goes right through the probe. But I figure, since it's unmanned, it's not that big of a loss. If it was manned, I would have tried to save the astronaut, maybe even had one killed, but, you know. So anyway, we finally get into orbit. We get a free return trajectory to the moon and all that good stuff. Now, at this point, I hadn't unlocked solar panels, so I had to budget my electricity pretty frugally, getting all the science from high over the moon, low over the moon, and then also I had to prepare myself for landing before I even left the moon's sphere of influence. And a nice little photo op there. Now, since I didn't know how to use the heat shield correctly, I actually jettisoned it when I jettisoned my maneuver stage. And that happened. So that was fun. Going through all that work and then just watching it blow up on re-entry. But you gotta love explosions, right? Explosions are always fun. And I thought I fixed it, and then I didn't, and so the next time around this happened. It was pretty much an identical mission up until that point. And not quite as dramatic this time around, but still just as disappointing. All of that science on that probe just got missed. Now, I did go back into the vehicle assembly building, did tweak some things. Basically, what was going on was I thought that the separator that's built into the heat shield separated the stage below it, but actually it separates the heat shield itself. So, on this mission, I actually forgot to decouple the maneuver stage around the moon, but luckily I was able to have a trajectory that kind of skimmed along the surface in such a way that it didn't actually blow anything up. So I didn't use that heat shield, but I do know, because I tested it around Kerbal, that it does work correctly. And so hopefully I'll be able to use this probe in some sort of application going out to planets and collecting science that way. Of course, I need solar panels for that. I would like to have a couple of different scientific instruments from that. But with the science that we got from this probe, I'm able to unlock basically some more electrical things, which is very good because I always find myself running out of electricity. And I was able to design this simple lander for Jebediah. Now, you notice it uses the same ascent and transfer stage, and then the lander itself is actually the maneuver stage as well. It's a little heavier, gets off to a slow start. Get up into orbit, ditch that stage. I actually had to use the maneuver stage a little bit to get around into orbit. Not much fuel on this guy. Jebediah is starting to get a little bit worried. And just a standard transfer, getting up into the moon sphere of influence and getting into a stable orbit around the moon. Now, I did want to land on the light side of the moon. I actually ended up hitting the Midlands. I don't like getting into the different biomes until I have a little bit more scientific instruments that I can get science from. So I make it easy on myself. And here's the landing. Now, as I mentioned, there's not that much fuel on this vehicle, which is kind of a shame because we actually don't end up running out of fuel. We do make a safe landing. Not to spoil the rest of the video for you, but there's not quite enough to get back home, which is a problem. And you can see the look of terror on Jebediah's face as he makes his descent because he's past the point of no return, but he knows that there's no way that he's going back home under his own power. And he only has 10 days worth of life support on this ship. But regardless, he's able to get that out of his mind, make a pretty good landing, if I do say so myself. I was controlling it. And he touches down about 2 or 3 meters a second, which is a very reasonable speed for the moon, and becomes the first Kerbal in this universe anyway to step foot on another body other than Kerbal. And you see those lights come together, and luckily there is a very photogenic picture of the Kerbal rise in the background. Grab a snapshot of that and start collecting some science. Now, the way I usually do science, as far as with the Mystery Goo and the Science Junior, I usually only take one Science Junior, but I take 2 Mystery Goos just to balance everything out. The first one I will transmit back home, and then the second one I will take back home. And that way it basically maxes out the science for the Mystery Goo canister. I do the same thing for the surface samples as well, which is a little bit difficult earlier on in the game, just because it's harder to generate electricity without running an engine. But, it works out. And after all the science is done, Jebediah goes back into his capsule, admires the view of Kerbal, and wonders if he will ever get back home. Perhaps they will be able to send a refueling mission out. Perhaps they will be able to send a rescue mission out. But until the next episode, we will just be wondering and waiting. Thank you for watching.